In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Peace be upon you. Good evening, everyone. We reached to the part 4. Let me say chapter 4, I think, with part 1 from Jude Obscure. The attendance today, we have Zainab Haj Ibrahim, Wafa Ghali, Fatima Khassab. We will see if the other will join us. Okay, we will start to make use of the time. Till now, do you have any question, guys? Do you know how to comment on a quotation in academic way? Okay, so this is the 4th lecture. We will continue studying Jude Obscure. Now I will try to play the recording of the chapter 4. I'd like, for example, I want you to listen. Then we will comment on the highlighted quotations. Okay?
Thomas Hardy, Part 1, Chapter 4. Walking somewhat slowly by reason of his concentration, the boy, an ancient man in some phases of thought, much younger than his years in others, was overtaken by a light-footed pedestrian, whom, notwithstanding the gloom, he could perceive to be wearing an extraordinarily tall hat, a swallow-tailed coat, and a watch-chain that danced madly and threw scintillations of skylight as its owner swung along with a pair of thin legs and noiseless boots. Jude, beginning to feel lonely, endeavoured to keep up with him. "Well, my man, I'm in a hurry, so you'll have to walk pretty fast if you keep alongside of me. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, I think. Physician Vilbert." "Ah, I've known everywhere, I see. That comes from being a public benefactor." Vilbert was an itinerant quack doctor, well known to the rustic population and absolutely unknown to anybody else, as he, indeed, took care to be, to avoid inconvenient investigations. Cottagers formed his only patients, and his Wessex-wide repute was among them alone. His position was humbler, and his field more obscure than those of the quacks with capital and an organized system of advertising. He was in fact a survival. The distances he traversed on foot were enormous, and extended nearly the whole length and breadth of Wessex. Jude had one day seen him selling a pot of coloured lard to an old woman as a certain cure for a bad leg, the woman arranging to pay a guinea in instalments of a shilling a fortnight for the precious salve, which, according to the physician, could only be obtained from a particular animal which grazed on Mount Sinai, and was to be captured only at great risk to life and limb. Jude, though he already had his doubts about this gentleman's medicines, felt him to be unquestionably a travelled personage, and one who might be a trustworthy source of information on matters not strictly professional. "I suppose you've been to Christminster, physician?" "I have, many times," replied the long thin man. "That's one of my centres." "It's a wonderful city for scholarship and religion." "You'd say so, my boy, if you'd seen it. Why, the very sons of the old women who do the washing of the colleges can talk in Latin. Not very good Latin, that I admit as a critic. Dog Latin. Cat Latin, as we used to call it in my undergraduate days." "And Greek?" "Well, that's more for the men who are in training for bishops, that they may be able to read the New Testament in the original." "I want to learn Latin and Greek myself." "A lofty desire. You must get a grammar of each tongue." "I mean to go to Christminster some day." "Whenever you do, you say that Physician Vilbert is the only proprietor of those celebrated pills that infallibly cure all disorders of the alimentary system, as well as asthma and shortness of breath, 2 and 3pence a box, specially licensed by the government stamp. Can you get me the grammars if I promise to say it hereabout?" "I'll sell you mine with pleasure, those I used as a student." "Oh, thank you, sir," said Jude gratefully, but in gasps, for the amazing speed of the physician's walk kept him in a dog-trot which was giving him a stitch in the side. "I think you'd better drop behind, my young man. Now I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get you the grammars and give you a first lesson, if you'll remember at every house in the village to recommend physician Vilbert's golden ointment, life drops and female pills. Where will you be with the grammars? I shall be passing here this day fortnight at precisely this hour of 25 minutes past 7. My movements are as truly timed as those of the planets in their courses. Here I'll be to meet you, said Jude. With orders for my medicines? Yes, physician. Jude then dropped behind, waited a few minutes to recover his breath, and went home with the consciousness of having struck a blow for Christminster.
Okay, let's go back to the highlighted quotations. Okay, who can comment on this quotation? This is a dialogue between Vilbert, who is a quack doctor. When we say quack doctor, what do we mean by quack doctor? False doctor. Okay. Jude will try or tries to get the knowledge or to get the way how to enter to Christminster through the physician Vilbert. He thought that Vilbert is a real physician. He asked him about Christminster and he gave him facts or general facts about people there and how to study. But in turn, he asked Jude to praise him in front of people of the village and to praise his medicine. Okay, what is the importance here? So the speaker is Vilbert, the addressee is Jude, or let me say sometimes the speaker or the dialogue goes on between Vilbert and Jude. What is the occasion? When Vilbert passed by Marygreen or Wessex in general, as the author says, and Jude tries to ask him about Christminster and how to go there. What is the importance here? What are the ideas that the author wants to show to us, and what are the ideas that you understand from these quotations? Who can answer me? By the way, I will register the attendance and the participation. راح سجل الحضور والمشاركات. اللي ما راح يشارك معناته ما هو حاضرني يا طلاب. يلا، شو الأفكار اللي موجودة بهذا الكوتيشن؟ منو بيخبرنا؟ شو الأفكار اللي بتستنتج؟ I will try to help you. The author says that Vilbert is only known through the countrysides of Wessex. Okay? But in the developed cities, he is not known. It means he is a false physician, a false doctor. Physician, it means doctor. What does this refer to? It refers that people are ignorant, okay, and can be cheated easily. Why? Because they are not educated. Isn't it right? So the countryside of the 19th century is the place of ignorance, the place for illiterate people. This is the idea. Another idea, that we have false people there. False people there. And those false people, or this type of person, will stand as a barrier or as a person who will divert or give Jude false information about Christminster. Okay? If we go to the second highlighted person, can you get me the grammar if I promise to say it hereabout? I will sell you mine with pleasure. Those I used as a student. Okay? Who is the speaker? And who is the addressee? Who is speaking to whom? Who can tell me? Do you hear me? بتسمعوني يا طلاب؟
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. يلا. Who is the speaker? من المتكلم؟ مين المتكلم يا طلابين؟ Can you get me the grammar if I promise to say it
I
hereabout?
think it's he is Jude.
Jude. Who is the addressee?
Addressee Vilbert doctor. The doctor Vilbert.
Dr. Vilbert. The physician Vilbert. Okay. What is the occasion? مناسبة كلام. When and where. وتنقول the occasion مناسبة الكلام. It means when and where. يلا
at their way
Okay. When Vilbert was passing by Mary Green
yes.
and Jude following him, asking him to bring him or to give him the grammar book. Okay? What is the importance? What is the idea here? شو الأفكار هون؟ Number one, Jude is a poor person. In another word, we can say poverty stands against education. Another idea, many people make use of يستغلون make use of poor people or simple people to get their aims. Isn't right? Do you agree with me?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So Wafa participated. Who has just participated? Wafa?
Yes, Wafa, yes.
Okay. We will see. Let's go. Okay. Listen, please.
Through the intervening fortnight, he ran about and smiled outwardly at his inward thoughts, as if they were people meeting and nodding to him, smiled with that singularly beautiful irradiation which is seen to spread on young faces at the inception of some glorious idea, as if a supernatural lamp were held inside their transparent natures, giving rise to the flattering fancy that heaven lies about them. He honestly performed his promise to the man of many cures, in whom he now sincerely believed, walking miles hither and thither among the surrounding hamlets, as the physician's agent in advance. On the evening appointed, he stood motionless on the plateau, at the place where he'd parted from Vilbert, and there awaited his approach. The road physician was fairly up to time, but, to the surprise of Jude, on striking into his pace, which the pedestrian did not diminish by a single unit of force, the latter seemed hardly to recognize his young companion, though with the lapse of the fortnight the evenings had grown light. Jude thought it might perhaps be owing to his wearing another hat, and he saluted the physician with dignity. "Well, my boy?" said the latter abstractedly. "I've come," said Jude. "You? Who are you? Oh, yes, to be sure. Got any orders, lad?" "Yes." And Jude told him the names and addresses of the cottagers who were willing to test the virtues of the world-renowned pills and salve. The quack mentally registered these with great care. "And the Latin and Greek grammars?" Jude's voice trembled with anxiety. "What about them?" "You were to bring me yours, that you used before you took your degree." "Ah, yes, yes. Forgot all about it, all. So many lives depending on my attention, you see, my man, that I can't give so much thought as I would like to other things. Jude controlled himself sufficiently long to make sure of the truth, and he repeated in a voice of dry misery, "You haven't brought 'em?" "No, but you must get me some more orders for sick people, and I'll bring the grammars next time."
Okay. Who is the speaker here? It's Wilbert, the addressee, Jude, the occasion, when Jude, after Jude telling people about Wilbert physician, the physician Wilbert and his magic medicine, Jude waits for the quack doctor or for the physician to do his promises and bring the grammar book. He waited for him. When he saw him at the beginning, he forgot him because he was lying. Okay, because he lies to him. When he reminds him and told him about the houses that Jude told about Wilbert, he registered them. And he asked them about the grammar. He told them, next time. Okay, and if you do more orders for me. So he is lying to him. He lies to Jude. He is making use of Jude. And he is not telling the truth because he is a quack doctor, false doctor. The importance is that people at that time make use of simple-minded and poor people.
Jude dropped behind. He was an unsophisticated boy, but the gift of sudden insight which is sometimes vouchsafed to children showed him all at once what shoddy humanity the quack was made of. There was to be no intellectual light from this source. The leaves dropped from his imaginary crown of laurel. He turned to a gate, leant against it, and cried bitterly. The disappointment was followed by an interval of blankness. He might perhaps have obtained grammars from Alfredston, but to do that required money and a knowledge of what books to order, and though physically comfortable, he was in such absolute dependence as to be without a farthing of his own. At this date, Mr. Phillotson sent for his pianoforte, and it gave Jude a lead. Why should he not write to the schoolmaster and ask him to be so kind as to get him the grammars in Christminster? He might slip a letter inside the case of the instrument, and it would be sure to reach the desired eyes. Why not ask him to send any old second-hand copies, which would have the charm of being mellowed by the university atmosphere? To tell his aunt of his intention would be to defeat it. It was necessary to act alone. After a further consideration of a few days, he did act, and on the day of the piano's departure, which happened to be his next birthday, clandestinely placed the letter inside the packing case, directed to his much-admired friend, being afraid to reveal the operation to his Aunt Drusilla, lest she should discover his motive and compel him to abandon his scheme. The piano was dispatched, and Jude waited days and weeks, calling every morning at the cottage post office before his great-aunt was stirring. At last a packet did indeed arrive at the village, and he saw from the ends of it that it contained 2 thin books. He took it away into a lonely place and sat down on a felled elm to open it. Ever since his first ecstasy or vision of Christminster and its possibilities, Jude had meditated much and curiously on the probable sort of process that was involved in turning the expressions of one language into those of another. He concluded that a grammar of the required tongue would contain primarily a rule, prescription, or clue of the nature of a secret cipher, which, once known, would enable him, by merely applying it, to change at will all words of his own speech into those of the foreign one. His childish idea was, in fact, a pushing to the extremity of mathematical precision, what is everywhere known as Grimm's Law, an aggrandizement of rough rules to ideal completeness. Thus he assumed that the words of the required language were always to be found somewhere latent in the words of the given language by those who had the art to uncover them, such art being furnished by the books aforesaid. When, therefore, having noted that the packet bore the postmark of Christminster, he cut the string, opened the volumes, and turned to the Latin grammar, which chanced to come uppermost, he could scarcely believe his eyes. The book was an old one, 30 years old, soiled, scribbled wantonly over with a strange name in every variety of enmity to the letterpress, and marked at random with dates 20 years earlier than his own day. But this was not the cause of Jude's amazement. He learnt for the first time that there was no law of transmutation, as in his innocence he had supposed, or there was in some degree, but the grammarian did not recognize it, but that every word, in both Latin and Greek, was to be individually committed to memory at the cost of years of plodding. Jude flung down the books, lay backward along the broad trunk of the elm, and was an utterly miserable boy for the space of a quarter of an hour. As he had often done before, he pulled his hat over his face, and watched the sun peering insidiously at him through the interstices of the straw. This was Latin and Greek, then, was it, this grand delusion? The charm he had supposed in store for him was really a labour like that of Israel in Egypt. What brains they must have in Christminster and the great schools, he presently thought, to learn words one by one up to tens of thousands. There were no brains in his head equal to this business, and as the little sun rays continued to stream in through his hat at him, he wished he had never seen a book, that he might never see another, that he had never been born. Somebody might have come along that way who would have asked him his trouble, and might have cheered him by saying that his notions were further advanced than those of his grammarian, but nobody did come, because nobody does. And under the crushing recognition of his gigantic error, Jude continued to wish himself out of the world. And
Okay, let's go to the highlighted quotations. The piano was dispatched, and Jude waited days, weeks, calling every morning at the cottage post office before the great aunt was tiring. At last a packet did indeed arrive at the village, and he saw from the end of it that it contained 2 thin books. He took it away into a lonely place and sat down on a felled elm to open it. Okay, after he is shocked by Quicksilver. At that time, Mr. Phillotson, who was the schoolmaster, the village teacher, asking for his piano. So he has got an idea to write for him, to write for his teacher, to send him some books of grammar for Greek and Latin. So he sent the message and waited days and weeks. Okay? Then Mr. Phillotson sent him second-hand book. What do you mean by second-hand book, guys? شو معنى second-hand book؟ منو بيجاوبنا؟
كتاب مستعمل.
ممتاز. Who said that?
فادية.
فادية. Excellent يا فادية. second hand معناتها كتاب مستعمل. So he sent him, or he sends him 2 books. Okay? So he got them and went to a lonely place. When we say lonely place, what do we mean by lonely place? Here we have reference to which school of thought? To Romanticism.
أي
Whenever
مكان منعزل يعني.
Yes.
مكان منعزل بعيد.
Okay. The lonely place refers to the school of romanticism. هدول جماعة الرومانتيسيزم كل ما بيحصل عندهم أمر سواء مبهج أو محزن بيرجعوا لوين؟ للطبيعة. Because they think that the nature is the mother. So, who is the speaker here? Now, I want somebody to comment on this quotation in an academic way. بدنا شخص يعلق على هذا الكوتيشن بطريقة أكاديمية.
For the author.
Okay, the author speaks to him, to whom? Speaks to the
Uh,
reader.
to read it.
Okay,
To read.
what is the occasion? When and where? بنقول occasion يعني مناسبة هذا الكلام، يعني إمتى ومتى حصل؟ When and where? When Jude gets book from whom? From Wilbert or from Phillotson? Who can tell me?
From Phillotson.
From Phillotson. Okay. Who is Phillotson يا وفاء?
He is the school master.
Okay, he's a schoolmaster. Okay. So when he gets books, how many books he gets, or how many books does he get from his schoolmaster?
Two books. Two books.
2 books. Are they new books?
No. Handbook.
Second-hand book.
Second hand.
Oh, okay. What is, or what are the ideas that can we exclude from this quotation? ما هي الأفكار التي نستنتجها من هذا القول? Who can tell me? What are the ideas? شو هن الأفكار؟ وقت بنقرأ هذا الكوتيشن شو الأفكار اللي بتتبادر لذهننا؟ شو الرسائل اللي بيوصلنا إياها الكاتب؟ بدنا مشاركة يا طلاب. إلى الآن في عندي فقط وفاء وفادية شاركوا.
بس يعني شو بنقول خيبة أمل.
نعم. Disappointed. He is disappointed. or disappointment كاسم. خيبة الأمل لحالها. خيبة الأمل disappointment. But here I think there is kind of hope because he is sent a book. يعني أرسل إليه كتاب هنا. Okay. Maybe there is a disappointment because the books are second hand. But for him it's kind of a pleasure. So the second hand book refers to the poverty. This is number one. Number two, education is very hard to get. It's not easy to get education, especially for rich people or poor people. For poor people.
Poor people.
Exactly, Afadia. Another ideas. Here we have reference to something classical. When we have reference to Latin and Greek, it refers to the classical literature. When we say classical literature, it refers to both Greek and Latin. كل ما بنشوف كلمة classical كأدب بتعني للأدب الإغريقي واللاتيني. أيضا when we say classical, it has another meaning. It means a standards that should be followed. Okay, you should put that in mind. So we have many ideas. Education is not easy. People who are poor suffer to be educated. We have many barriers to get educated. Okay, and not all people are faithful. We have when Jude deals Dr. Wilbert, he was disappointed because that man was not a human person. and he was using him يعني كان يستغله. But Mr. Phillotson was somehow trustworthy. Okay, let's go to the next chapter. We'll try to follow.
Obscure by Thomas Hardy. Chapter 5. During the 3 or 4 succeeding years, a quaint and singular vehicle might have been discerned moving along the lanes and byroads near Marygreen, driven in a quaint and singular way. In the course of a month or two, after the receipt of the books, Jude had grown callous to the shabby trick played him by the dead languages. In fact, his disappointment at the nature of those tongues had, after a while, been the means of still further glorifying the erudition of Christminster. To acquire languages, departed or living, in spite of such obstinacies as he now knew them inherently to possess, was a Herculean performance, which gradually led him on to a greater interest in it than in the presupposed patent process. The mountain weight of material under which the ideas lay, in those dusty volumes called the classics, piqued him into a dogged, mouse-like subtlety of attempt to move it piecemeal. He had endeavored to make his presence tolerable to his crusty maiden aunt by assisting her to the best of his ability, and the business of the little cottage bakery had grown in consequence. An aged horse with a hanging head had been purchased for £8 at a sale, a creaking cart with a witty brown tilt obtained for a few pounds more, and in this turnout it became Jude's business thrice a week to carry loaves of bread to the villagers and solitary cotters immediately round Marygreen. The singularity aforesaid lay, after all, less in the conveyance itself than in Jude's manner of conducting it along its route. Its interior was the scene of most of Jude's education by private study. As soon as the horse had learnt the road and the houses at which he was to pause a while, the boy, seated in front, would slip the reins over his arm, ingeniously fix open, by means of a strap attached to the tilt, the volume he was reading, spread the dictionary on his knees, and plunge into the simpler passages from Caesar, Virgil, or Horace, as the case might be, in his purblind, stumbling way, and with an expenditure of labor that would have made a tender-hearted pedagogue shed tears, yet somehow getting at the meaning of what he read, and divining rather than beholding the spirit of the original, which often to his mind was something else than that which he had been taught to look for. The only copies he had been able to lay hands on were old Delphin editions, because they were superseded, and therefore cheap. But bad for idle schoolboys, it did so happen they were passably good for him. The hampered and lonely itinerant conscientiously covered up the marginal readings, and used them merely on points of construction, as he would have used a comrade or tutor who should have happened to be passing by. And though Jude may have had little chance of becoming a scholar by these rough and ready means, he was in the way of getting into the groove he wished to follow. While he was busied with these ancient pages, which had already been thumbed by hands possibly in the grave, digging out the thoughts of these minds so remote yet so near, the bony old horse pursued his rounds, and Jude would be aroused from the woes of Dido by the stoppage of his cart, and the voice of some old woman crying, "Two today, baker, and I return this stale one." He was frequently met in the lanes by pedestrians, and others without his seeing them, and by degrees the people of the neighborhood began to talk about his method of combining work and play, such they considered his reading to be, which, though probably convenient enough to himself, was not altogether a safe proceeding for other travelers along the same roads. There were murmurs. Then a private residence of an adjoining place informed the local policeman that the baker's boy should not be allowed to read while driving, and insisted that it was the constable's duty to catch him in the act, and take him to the police court at Alfredston, and get him fined for dangerous practices on the highway. The policeman thereupon lay in wait for Jude, and one day accosted him and cautioned him. As Jude had...
Okay, who is the speaker here? The author speaks to the reader. Okay, the occasion when Jude tries to read while driving the cart. or letting the horse drive alone because he keep by heart let me say knows the road. So people try to complain about Jude because he is driving while he is reading. Okay, so the policeman there in that place waits for Jude, cautions him not to read while driving. What is the idea here? That even society is against education. Another thing, which is the restrictions which prevents person or people from improving themselves. The third idea, that poverty is one of the barriers that prevents somebody to be educated. Okay, those are the ideas. Let's go on.
To get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to heat the oven and mix and set in the bread that he distributed later in the day, he was obliged to go to bed at night immediately after laying the sponge, so that if he could not read his classics on the highway, he could hardly study at all. The only thing to be done was, therefore, to keep a sharp eye ahead and around him as well as he could in the circumstances, and slip away his books as soon as anyone loomed in the distance, the policeman in particular. To do that official justice, he did not put himself much in the way of Jude's bread cart, considering that in such a lonely district the chief danger was to Jude himself, and often on seeing the white tilt over the hedges he would move in another direction. On a day when Folly was getting quite advanced, being now about 16, and had been stumbling through the Carmen Seculare on his way home, he found himself to be passing over the high edge of the plateau by the Brown house. The light had changed, and it was the sense of this which had caused him to look up. The sun was going down, and the full moon was rising simultaneously behind the woods in the opposite quarter. His mind had become so impregnated with the poem that, in a moment of the same implosive emotion which years before had caused him to kneel on the ladder, he stopped the horse, alighted, and glancing round to see that nobody was in sight, knelt down on the roadside bank with open book. He turned first to the shiny goddess, who seemed to look so softly and critically at his doings, then to the disappearing luminary on the other hand, as he began, Phoebe Silvarumque potens Diana. The horse stood still till he had finished the hymn, which Jude repeated under the sway of a polytheistic fancy that he would never have thought of humoring in broad daylight. Reaching home, he mused over his curious superstition, innate or acquired, in doing this, and the strange forgetfulness which had led to such a lapse from common sense and custom in one who wished, next to being a scholar, to be a Christian divine. It had all come of reading heathen works exclusively. The more he thought of it, the more convinced he was of his inconsistency. He began to wonder whether he could be reading quite the right books for his object in life. Certainly there seemed little harmony between this pagan literature and the medieval colleges at Christminster, that ecclesiastical romance in stone. Ultimately, he decided that in his sheer love of reading he had taken up a wrong emotion for a Christian young man. He had dabbled in Clarke's Homer, but had never yet worked much at the New Testament in the Greek, though he possessed a copy, obtained by post from a second-hand bookseller. He abandoned.
Hi again, this is the second part of the fourth lecture. We will continue. Please pay attention and try to follow up with the lesson, with the recording.
Limited his reading almost entirely to the Gospels and Epistles in Griesbach's text. Moreover, on going into Alfredston one day, he was introduced to patristic literature by finding at the bookseller's some volumes of the Fathers, which had been left behind by an insolvent clergyman of the neighborhood. As another outcome of this change of groove, he visited on Sundays all the churches within a walk and deciphered the Latin inscriptions on 15th century brasses and tombs. On one of these pilgrimages, he met with a hunchbacked old woman of great intelligence, who read everything she could lay her hands on, and she told him more yet of the romantic charms of the city of light and lore. Thither he resolved as firmly as ever to go. But how live in that city? At present he had no income at all. He had no trade or calling of any dignity or stability whatever on which he could subsist while carrying out an intellectual labor which might spread over many years. What was most required by citizens? Food, clothing, and shelter. An income from any work in preparing the first would be too meager. For making the second he felt a distaste. The preparations of the third requisite he inclined to. They built in a city, therefore he would learn to build. He thought of his unknown uncle, his cousin Susanna's father, an ecclesiastical worker in metal, and somehow medieval art in any material was a trade for which he had rather a fancy. He could not go far wrong in following his uncle's footsteps and engaging himself a while with the carcasses that contained the scholar souls. As a preliminary, he obtained some small blocks of freestone, metal not being available, and suspending his studies a while, occupied his spare half-hours in copying the heads and capitals in his parish church. There was a stonemason of a humble kind in Alfredston, and as soon as he had found a substitute for himself in his aunt's little business, he offered his services to this man for a trifling wage. Here Jude had the opportunity of learning at least the rudiments of freestone working. Some time later he went to a church builder in the same place, and under the architect's direction became handy at restoring the dilapidated masonries of several village churches round about, not forgetting that he was only following up this handicraft as a prop to lean on while he prepared those greater engines which he flattered himself would be better fitted for him. He yet was interested in his pursuit on its own account. He now had lodgings during the week in the little town, whence he returned to Merry Green Village every Saturday evening, and thus he reached and passed his 19th year. End of chapter 5.
Okay, let's go to this quotation, and we have, okay. Now, in this quotation, here we have a chat with a woman, which talks to him about Latin, about something about the city of light and of education, which inspired him. Now he start thinking about to make some kind of stability to support himself in education. What somebody needs to be stable: food, clothing, and shelter. And in order to support himself, he should find a job. So he went to a stone mason. What do you mean by stone mason? Who can tell me? Stone mason is a person who works in stone. نحات حجر. Okay? Of a humble kind in Alfredston. So where is the place in Alfredston? As soon as he had found a substitute for himself in his aunt's little business, so he finds another job. He finds a trade. Okay? A trade. When we say a trade, it means a profession to support himself. He offered his service to this man for trifling a wage. Here Jude had the opportunity of learning at least the rudiment of this freestone working. Now, this is when we say stonemason. Here we have something which reflects to the biography of Thomas Hardy himself, because he is a stonemason. So here the speaker is the author, the addressee is the reader. The occasion at Alfredston when Jude tries to support himself by learning a stonemasoning and changing his profession to support himself in order to be educated. What is the importance? The importance is that man is trying to move or to change his position in life. He starts to try to support himself in order to be educated. This is reference to the hardship of education at that time. Okay? Stonemasoning is a very hard profession. It's not easy. It refers to the hard times of those people who lived there. Here we have another reference to the Thomas Hardy himself, because Jude Fowley presents Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy is a stonemason and Jude Fowley is a stonemason. Whenever we have something mutual between the author himself and his main character, here we have what is called autobiographical element. What do we call it? Autobiographical element. وقت نشوف شيء مشترك بين الشخصية والكاتب بنقول في عنا something autobiographical. إذا في عنا عدة أفكار ومن بيناتها الأوتوبيوغرافي. Here we have a task. في عنا وظيفة فاطمة اكتبيها للطلاب. What is the difference between biography, bibliography, and autobiography? Okay? Biography, bibliography, and autobiography. Okay? Okay. Now we will move to a new chapter. Pay attention to the 6th chapter.
Hardy. Chapter 6.
Chapter 6.
At this memorable date of his life, he was, on Saturday, returning from Alfredston to Marygreen about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was fine, warm, and soft summer weather, and he walked with his tools at his back, his little chisels clinking faintly against the larger ones in his basket. It being the end of the week, he had left work early and had come out of the town by a roundabout route, which he did not usually frequent, having promised to call at a flour mill near Crescombe to execute a commission for his aunt. He was in an enthusiastic mood. He seemed to see his way to living comfortably in Christminster in the course of a year or two, and knocking at the doors of one of those strongholds of learning of which he had dreamed so much.
So now he has a stable life. Okay, everything is okay, even the weather is okay. Every Saturday he goes back to Marygreen to his aunt to see her and to spend his holiday there. We will see now everything is stable. In a matter of 1 year or two, he will have the ability to go to Christminster. We will see what are the barriers and the restriction of the societies, and how he will be seduced by a girl to divert his path and to prevent him from being educated. We will see.
He might, of course, have gone there now, in some capacity or other, but he preferred to enter the city with a little more assurance as to means than he could be said to feel at present. A warm self-content suffused him when he considered what he had already done. Now and then, as he went along, he turned to face the peeps of country on either side of him, but he hardly saw them. The act was an automatic repetition of what he had been accustomed to do when less occupied, and the one matter which really engaged him was the mental estimation of his progress thus far. I have acquired quite an average student's power to read the common ancient classics, Latin in particular. This was true, Jude possessing a faculty in that language which enabled him, with great ease to himself, to beguile his lonely walks by imaginary conversations therein. I have read 2 books of the Iliad, besides being pretty familiar with passages such as the speech of Phoenix in the 9th book, the fight of Hector and Ajax in the 14th, the appearance of Achilles unarmed in his heavenly armor in the 18th, and the funeral games in the 23rd. I have also done some Hesiod, a little scrap of Thucydides, and a lot of the Greek Testament. I wish there was only one dialect, all the same. I have done some mathematics, including the first 6 and the 11th and 12th books of Euclid, and algebra as far as simple equations. I know something of the Fathers and something of Roman and English history. These things are only a beginning, but I shall not make much farther advance here for the difficulty of getting books. Hence, I must next concentrate all my energies on settling in Christminster. Once there, I shall so advance, with the assistance I shall there get, that my present knowledge will appear to me but as childish ignorance. I must save money, and I will, and one of those colleges shall open its doors to me, shall welcome whom now it would spurn, if I wait 20 years for the welcome. I'll be D.D. before I have done. And then he continued to dream, and thought he might become even a bishop by leading a pure, energetic, wise Christian life. And what an example he would set! If his income were £5,000 a year, he would give away £4,500 in one form and another, and live sumptuously for him on the remainder. Well, on second thoughts, a bishop was absurd. He would draw the line at an archdeacon. Perhaps a man could be as good and as learned and as useful in the capacity of archdeacon as in that of bishop. Yet he thought of the bishop again.
Now, he is mentioning, or he mentions the book that he read. He is preparing himself. He is enthusiastic about going to Christminster. He will be DD. It means Doctor of Divinity. What do you mean by DD? Doctor of Divinity. So he is thinking of being a bishop or a religious man. Okay. He is, or he has determination to go there even in a 20 years. Okay. And he was counting the amount of money to spend and to save. And he makes preparation to go there in order to support himself. While thinking about that, we will see what will going on.
Meanwhile, I will read, as soon as I am settled in Christminster, the books I have not been able to get a hold of here: Livy, Tacitus, Herodotus, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Aristophanes. Hoity-toity! The sounds were expressed in light voices on the other side of the hedge, but he did not notice them. His thoughts went on. Euripides, Plato, Aristotle, Lucretius, Epictetus, Seneca, Antoninus. Then I must master other things, the Fathers thoroughly, Bede and ecclesiastical history generally, a smattering of Hebrew. I only know the letters as yet. Hoity-toity! But I can work hard. I have staying power in abundance, thank God, and it is that which tells. Yes, Christminster shall be my alma mater, and I'll be her beloved.
He is thinking about books, things, and we have girls saying to him hoity-toity and trying to attract his attention by the river.
Beloved son, in whom she shall be well pleased. In his deep concentration on these transactions of the future, Jude's walk had slackened, and he was now standing quite still, looking at the ground as though the future were thrown thereon by a magic lantern. On a sudden, something smacked him sharply in the ear, and he became aware that a soft, cold substance had been flung at him and had fallen at his feet. A glance told him what it was: a piece of flesh, the characteristic part of a barrow pig, which the countrymen used for greasing their boots, as it was useless for any other purpose. Pigs were rather plentiful hereabout, being bred and fattened in large numbers in certain parts of North Wessex.
Okay. While he was thinking, so a girl was trying to attract his attention, or girls, but he was indulged in thinking about the Latin and the Greek books. Then one of the girls smashed him. hit him or throw the big spittle on his ears. Okay, this is a reference that man was thinking about religion, education, but woman was trying to divert him from his path to education. And she throws him with the dirty piece of a pig. Okay? She throws him with a dirty piece of a pig. Okay? So, this is a reference to the something sexual. She tries to attract him. She tries to seduce him. So, everything is stable, everything is okay. He was making his preparation for going to Christminster when that girl or that group of girls tries to attract him. Here we have a reference to Adam and Eve. According to the Christian mythology, that when Adam and Eve were in heaven, according to the Christian doctrine, they said, or to the Christian belief, Eve is the person who advised Adam to eat from an apple, okay, according to the Christian belief, and she is the one who makes him descend from the heaven. And here we have resemblance to that status. Jude is Adam, and we will see that Arabella, the girls who throws that piece of flesh on that man, is a representative for Eve, according to the Christian belief. But in Islam, it's something different. In Islam, it's not the Eve who convinced Adam to do that, and we don't know whether it's an apple or something or another tree. Okay, let's go back to our story. Now we will see that a girl will change his life path and will destroy him.
On the other side of the hedge was a stream, whence, as he now for the first time realized, had come the slight sounds of voices and laughter that had mingled with his dreams. He mounted the bank and looked over the fence. On the further side of the stream stood a small homestead, having a garden and pigsties attached. In front of it, beside the brook, 3 young women were kneeling, with buckets and platters beside them containing heaps of pigs' chitterlings, which they were washing in the running water. 1 or 2 pairs of eyes slyly glanced up and perceived that his attention had at last been attracted, and that he was watching them. They braced themselves for inspection by putting their mouths demurely into shape and recommencing their rinsing operations with assiduity. "Thank you," said Jude severely. "I didn't throw it, I tell you," asserted one girl to her neighbor, as if unconscious of the young man's presence. "Nor I," the second answered. "Oh, Annie, how can you?" said the third. "If I had thrown anything at all, it shouldn't have been that." "Pooh! I don't care for him." And they laughed and continued their work without looking up, still ostentatiously accusing each other. Jude grew sarcastic as he wiped his face and caught their remarks. "You didn't do it. Oh, no," he said to the upstream one of the 3. She whom he addressed was a fine, dark-eyed girl, not exactly handsome, but capable of passing as such at a little distance, despite some coarseness of skin and fiber. She had a round and prominent bosom, full lips, perfect teeth, and the rich complexion of a Cochin hen's egg. She was a complete and substantial female animal, no more, no less, and Jude was almost certain that to her was attributable the enterprise of attracting his attention from dreams of the humaner letters to what was simmering in the minds around him.
Now, who can comment on this quotation? Who is the speaker? The speaker is the author. Who is the addressee? The addressee is the reader. The occasion when one of the three girls smacked or threw a piece of flesh from the pig toward Jude, trying to attract his attention. Now we have description of that girl who smacked Jude, and we have a physical description in an animal desire. Let me say in a naturalistic description. When we say naturalistic description, in a scientific way, okay? He doesn't give attention to the feelings because he is describing Arabella as an animal woman because she thinks in according to instinct, okay? So if we go back to is it a substantial female animal? She was a complete substantial female animal because she thinks in an animalistic way, not in a human way. But what is important to us that here Jude was almost certain that to her was attributed to the enterprise of attracting his attention from the dreams. What are his dreams? To be educated, to go to great master, to have to be stable financially. It's a very important quotation describing Arabella. Okay, we will continue.
That you'll never be told, she said deedily. Whoever did it was wasteful of other people's property. Oh, that's nothing. But you want to speak to me, I suppose? Oh, yes, if you like to. Shall I clamber across, or will you come to the plank above here? Perhaps he foresaw an opportunity, for somehow or other the eyes of the brown girl rested in his own when he said the words, and there was a momentary flash of intelligence, a dumb announcement of affinity in passe between herself and him, which, so far as Jude Foley was concerned, had no sort of premeditation in it. She saw that he had singled her out from the three, as a woman is singled out in such cases, for no reasoned purpose of further acquaintance, but in commonplace obedience to conjunctive orders from headquarters, unconsciously received by unfortunate men when the last intentions of their lives is to be occupied with the feminine. Springing to her feet, she said, "Bring back what is lying there." Jude was now aware that no message on any matter connected with her father's business had prompted her signal to him. He set down his basket of tools, picked up the scrap of opal, beat a pathway for himself with his stick, and got over the hedge. They walked in parallel lines, one on each bank of the stream, towards the small plank bridge. As the girl drew nearer to it, she gave, without Jude perceiving it, an adroit little suck to the interior of each of her cheeks in succession, by which curious and original maneuver she brought, as by magic upon its smooth and rotund surface, a perfect dimple, which she was able to retain there as long as she continued to smile. This production of dimples at will was a not unknown operation which many attempted, but only a few succeeded in accomplishing. They met in...
Here we have the description of the status when Jude meets Arabella, and she tries to attract him, making dimples. Dimples, it means those holes in the cheeks, trying to pretend some kind of smile. She succeeded in doing that. It means she tried a lot to do that. It has a reference that she is a bad girl.
In the middle of the plank, and Jude, tossing back her missile, seemed to expect her to explain why she had audaciously stopped him by this novel artillery instead of by hailing him. But she, slyly looking in another direction, swayed herself backwards and forwards on her hand as if clutching the rail of the bridge, till, moved by amatory curiosity, she turned her eyes critically upon him. "You don't think I would Shy things at you? Oh no. We are doing this for my father, who naturally doesn't want anything thrown away. He makes that into dubbin. She nodded towards the fragment on the grass. What made either of the others throw it, I wonder? Jude asked, politely accepting her assertion, though he had very large doubts as to its truth. Impudence! Don't tell folk it was I, mind. How can I? I don't know your name. Ah, no. Shall I tell it to you? Do. Arabella Dawn. I'm living here. I must have known it if I had often come this way, but I mostly go straight along the high road. My father is a pig breeder, and these girls are helping me wash the innards for black puddings and such like. They talked a little more, and a little more, as they stood regarding each other and leaning against the handrail of the bridge. The unvoiced call of woman to man, which was uttered very distinctly by Arabella's personality, held Jude to the spot against his intention, almost against his will, and in a way new to his experience. It is scarcely an exaggeration to say that till this moment Jude had never looked at a woman to consider her as such, but had vaguely regarded the sex as being outside his life and purposes. He gazed from her eyes to her mouth, thence to her bosom, and to her full round naked arms, wet, mottled with the chill of the water, and firm as marble. What a nice-looking girl you are, he murmured, though the words had not been necessary to express his sense of her magnetism. Ah, you should see me on Sundays, she said vacantly. I don't suppose I could, he answered. That's for you to think on. There's nobody after me just now, though there may be in a week or two. She had spoken this without a smile, and the dimples disappeared. Jude felt...
At the beginning, we have reference. The speaker here, or the dialogue, goes between Jude and Arabella. At the beginning, the author describes that he is a man who is away from thinking of women, but his calling or her talking to him is a naturalistic calling for a woman to a man, female to a male. Okay, but for him, this is the first time he has experience with love relationship. As soon as he appraised her looking, she immediately invited him to her lodging. We will see that she is a daughter of a pig breeder, يعني مربي خنازير. He is a low, or let me say, descended trade. You know, pigs and the dirts. It refers to Arabella, okay, and her behavior, and we will see that all things which are reference to the personality of Arabella are right. So she gives him a meeting time, invited him to her house.
Himself drifting strangely, but could not help it. Will you let me? I don't mind. By this time she had managed to get back one dimple by turning her face aside for a moment, and repeating the odd little sucking operation before mentioned, Jude being still unconscious of more than a general impression of her appearance. Next Sunday? He hazarded. Tomorrow, that is. Yes. Shall I call? Yes. She brightened with a little glow of triumph, swept him almost tenderly with her eyes in turning, and retracing her steps down the brookside grass, rejoined her companions. Jude Foley shouldered his tool basket and resumed his lonely way, filled with an ardor at which he mentally stood at gaze. He had just inhaled a single breath from a new atmosphere, which had evidently been hanging round him everywhere he went, for he knew not how long, but had somehow been divided from his actual breathing as by a sheet of glass. The intentions as to reading, working, and learning, which he had so precisely formulated only a few minutes earlier, were suffering a curious collapse into a corner. He knew not how.
Now we have a new change in Jude Fowley's life. We have even the breath is different. It means he entered in a new life. We will see that his education will suffer curiously, and we have something will be changed all along, okay, his life. It means he will suffer all along life. So the speaker is the author, the addressee is the reader. The occasion when first Jude Fowley meets Arabella and takes a time for, or let me say, dated her. Dated, it means take a date to meet her. Now we have something changed, and the author gives us a hint for what will be in the future, or what is going on, will be going on in the future. Here we have one of the plot techniques, تقنيات حبكة, which is foreshadowing. Foreshadowing, it means الإذعان. Okay, the author let us predict, نتنبأ what will going on. انه خلينا نتنبأ انه راح يصير دمار، انه الهواء حتى النفس اللي كان نفسه تغير هلا، انه راح ينحرف عن مسار، او راح يصير شيء راح يضل متعلق فيه طول الحياة. هذا شو مسميه foreshadowing؟ شو مسميه يا طلاب؟ foreshadowing، الإذعان يعني. اوكي، او جعلنا نتنبأ بما سيحصل بالمستقبل. اوكي.
How? Well, it's only a bit of fun, he said to himself, faintly conscious that to common sense there was something lacking, and still more obviously something redundant in the nature of this girl who had drawn him to her, which made it necessary that he should assert mere sportiveness on his part as his reason in seeking her, something in her quite antipathetic to that side of him which had been occupied with literary study and the magnificent Christminster dream. It had been no Vestal who chose that missile for opening her attack on him. He saw this with his intellectual eye just for a short, fleeting while, as by the light of a falling lamp one might momentarily see an inscription on a wall before being enshrouded in darkness. And then this passing discriminative power was withdrawn, and Jude was lost to all conditions of things in the advent of a fresh and wild pleasure, that of having found a new channel for emotional interest hitherto unsuspected, though it had lain close beside him. He was to meet this enkindling one of the other sex on the following Sunday. Meanwhile, the girl had joined her companions, and she silently resumed her flicking and sousing of the chitterlings in the pellucid stream. "Catchton, my dear?" laconically asked the girl called Annie. "I don't know. I wish I had thrown something else than that," regretfully murmured Arabella. "Lord, he's nobody, though you med think so. He used to drive old Drusilla Folly's bread cart over at Marygreen, till he prenticed himself at Alfredston. Since then he's been very stuck up, and always reading. He wants to be a scholar, they say. Oh, I don't care what he is, or anything about him. Don't you think it, my child. Oh, don't ye? You needn't try to deceive us. What did you say talking to him for, if you didn't want him? Whether you do or whether you don't, he's as simple as a child. I see it as you courted on the bridge, when he looked at ye as if he had never seen a woman before in his born days. Well, he's to be had by any woman who can get him to care for her a bit, if she likes to set herself to catch him the right way." End of chapter 6.
So she is not in love with him. She just plays with him. Okay? Look to the naturalistic, not naturalistic, the bad behavior of that girl. We will see how everything will be changed.
During the whole bygone week, he had been resolving to set this afternoon apart for a special purpose. Miss Hardy. Chapter 7.
Okay.
The next day, Jude Foley was pausing in his bedroom with the sloping ceiling, looking at the books on the table and then at the black mark on the plaster above them, made by the smoke of his lamp in past months. It was Sunday afternoon, 24 hours after his meeting with Arabella Dawn. During the whole bygone week, he had been resolving to set this afternoon apart for a special purpose, the rereading of his Greek Testament, his new one, with better type than his old copy, following Griesbach's text as amended by numerous correctors, and with variorum readings in the margin. He was proud of the book, having obtained it by boldly writing to its London publisher, a thing he had never done before. He had anticipated much pleasure in this afternoon's reading under the quiet roof of his great-aunt's house as formerly, where he now slept only twice a week. But a new thing, a great hitch, had happened yesterday in the gliding and noiseless current of his life, and he felt as a snake must feel who has sloughed off its winter skin and cannot understand the brightness and sensitiveness of its new one. He would not go out to meet her after all. He sat down, opened the book, and with his elbows firmly planted on the table and his hands to his temples, began at the beginning. I, kene, dijathe ke. Had he promised to call for her? Surely he had. She would wait indoors, poor girl, and waste all her afternoon on account of him. There was something in her, too, which was very winning, apart from promises. He ought not to break faith with her. Even though he had only Sundays and weekday evenings for reading, he could afford one afternoon, seeing that other young men afforded so many. After today, he would probably never see her again. Indeed, it would be impossible